Welcome to a fresh This or That. This or That is a very clever title that I have given to the series here on my channel where I help y'all compare products that you are trying to decide between in your life to help you save money and pick the right product for you. I'm going to swatch them and show you the differences and also give you my personal take on what I would recommend if it was just me recommending to a friend. So let's go ahead and jump in. So if you do want to participate in the next iteration of this, because this is an ongoing series, definitely follow me over on Instagram and keep an eye on my stories, because that's where I put prompts up asking you for submissions for this or that videos and all sorts of other things. And I wanted to thank y'all because you submitted some things that I don't have. And so I went on Sephora and I bought them. So they'll be coming soon. Future videos, future this or that's, etc. All right, all that official stuff out of the way. First question is Thrive Buildable Blur versus Bare Minerals Complexion Rescue. This is a really good one because Thrive just reformulated their CC cream, their Buildable Blur CC cream, and they just took out the octinoxate. They added in a physical sunscreen as well. Now it is homosalate, octisalate, and zinc oxide, and I love this. They are actually sending me the next lighter shade as well, so I'll be able to give y'all an update after I try that. So I'm gonna go ahead and swatch these. This is also a good way to show that 150 light, which was the darker of the two that they sent, but it is definitely not my shade. Let's turn this down because then y'all will be able to see the swatches better. So it's very easy to see the difference here. The Thrive is the one that's a lot more yellow, and then there is the Bare Minerals Complexion Rescue. All right, so there are the swatches blended out. Not completely blend, like sheared out, but I still want y'all to be able to see it. So as far as the formulas are concerned, the Bare Minerals is all physical sunscreen, and it is a broad spectrum SPF 30 with 6.2% titanium dioxide, and the Buildable Blur, like I said, is a combo, and it is an SPF 40 with 7.8% zinc oxide, 9% homosalate, and 4.5% octisalate. In terms of performance and appearance on the skin, the Thrive is a lot more coverage. They call it a CC cream, and you can get it really thin on the skin, but I would definitely say that you're gonna get more coverage overall from that, whereas the Bare Minerals I don't feel like is really designed with coverage in mind. I can wear the Bare Minerals on its own with nothing else. It kind of just looks like a really pretty blurring, tiny bit of coverage camouflaging sunscreen. When I put it on, it's so gorgeous. Like, look at the actual like little bit of the way that it adds this lovely radiance to the skin on the Bare Minerals, and then the Thrive has a really nice kind of glycerin dry down. You know, it has that smooth, like better than skin finish, like you've already hit it with a setting mist, but it doesn't have any true like luminous particles that I can detect with my naked eye, which is not always to be trusted, but definitely not anywhere near as noticeably as the Bare Minerals. So the Bare Minerals is for somebody who's really, really not looking for coverage in their, you know, actual like all over the face complexion product. And that's probably gonna make it more user-friendly, like between shades and stuff like that. Whereas the Thrive, it's like very important that you get a really specific shade match, but you can build it up to really beautiful full coverage if you want to, honestly. Like, not Estee Lauder double wear, but I can get it to where I don't see my freckles. And it powders really beautifully, whereas the Complexion Rescue, I would say, is almost literally a moisturizer. It is like a tinted moisturizer in the truest sense. It doesn't actually have a dry down type cosmetic behavior to it, and I would definitely not say that it is for like combo to oily skin. It will just kind of slip and slide around and get greasy on you, whereas the Thrive I feel like has a little bit more tenacity on maybe combo skin. I don't think I'd recommend it for oily skin. It's super hydrating. They both are, but the Complexion Rescue is just far less of a cosmetic and far more of like a sunscreen type skincare product. And I don't really prefer one over the other. They actually just seem to have very different use cases for me, so I like both. Okay, I got a ton of requests to compare different things to the Monica Blunder cover. So I have Monica Blunder cover versus Westmin Atelier Vital Skin Foundation, Blunder cover versus Danessa Myricks Blurring Balm, Blunder cover versus Sneaky Balm from Salt, New York, Blunder cover versus the Clé de Peau stick, which I do not have. If y'all want me to try Clé de Peau, I will, but their shade range is just garbage. So I'm just like, so yeah, those are the big four. We've got Danessa Myricks, Blunder cover, Westman Atelier, and Salt, New York. Let's swatch them. All right, so here they are. tough to see again, but we have the Westmin Atelier Vital Skin Foundation Stick in Atelier 0. Here's the Blunder cover in 2.25. This is the Janessa Myricks, that blurring balm powder, and that's in the shade 1. And then here is Salt New York Sneaky Balm. It's so sneaky you can almost not see it, and that is in the shade 12. If I had to describe the consistencies here, the Westmin Atelier is a little bit smoother when you touch it. It melts on the contact of your fingers more easily, and it behaves more like it's got oils in it than waxes. So that would explain the feeling of it having like a lower melting temperature. The appearance of it compared to the Blunder cover right here is very, very similar. Like, I would have trouble telling them apart just looking at them, but the feeling of the Blunder cover is totally different. It's got this like little bit of like grab to it because it does feel like it's waxier. It's just more committed feeling on the skin, whereas it does feel like the Westman Atelier, while you can get pretty good coverage out of it, I've never been a huge fan of wearing it all over my face. If I were to go for like the clean beauty formula for all over my face, I would go towards Kjaerweis for that. And the Blunder cover, I do feel like if I wanted to, I could, you know, put on a primer or something and get it to slip enough that it goes all over and it wouldn't look weird. It wouldn't start to kind of break up. I feel like Westman Atelier has almost like a smaller range of coverage levels. It's like you can get medium to buildable to like almost like a concealer level, whereas I feel like Monica Blunder could go all the way, if you were to mix it with something, could go all the way from like skin tint to concealer. It could be your only complexion product. For that reason, when you do first put it on, you're like, wow, this is kind of intense. You know, it does have a lot of coverage, but it doesn't look cakey. It's really, really light on the skin, and I just like the feeling of how it commits. And even though it does feel hydrating enough on my skin that I don't feel like it's gonna like dry out over the day, it still has a nice amount of like thinness and dry down on the skin that it can, you know, bear the weight of powder, which is kind of more than I can say for the very coconut oil based Westman Atelier. Love the Westman Atelier, I just wouldn't powder it. I just wear it on its own, and it's gorgeous, like underneath my eyes and stuff like that, but I just feel like they have different use cases, and for something that you want to be something that you can put anywhere, everywhere, and really build to full coverage if you absolutely needed to, and bear powder, like, and wear like a very normal face of makeup, whereas I feel like Westman Atelier, you gotta wear a Westman Atelier face of makeup with it. You know, it's not gonna go with your like, your Revlons and your like Pat McGraths of the world. Like, it's just not going to stand up to you like buffing a powder blush on and stuff like that. It just doesn't have that versatility. The Monica Blunder cover, you can use it as an eye base. You can use it as a concealer. It will bear powder. You can use setting spray on it. It's not gonna slip and slide around. It doesn't feel like there's that clean beauty compromise that I always talk about, where you're just kind of sacrificing performance for something being really simple and beautiful and luxurious and making your skin look like skin. It's a little more natural looking, but you do lose a little bit of the performance as it pertains to the Westman Atelier. Not a lot. I feel like the Blunder cover is like long wearing almost. You know, it feels like a true performance cosmetic. And then when we're talking about, I mean, these are in an entirely different class. I will fully admit, I bought 2 of these. I have the Janessa Myricks in Universal, and then I have it in the shade 1, and y'all, I still don't fully understand what this is. I still do not feel like I can properly explain to someone else what this is. It is exactly what she says it is. It is a balm powder, but I don't understand where that goes in my routine. Maybe if you do have more combo to oily skin, this is a fantastic way to like mattify without powdering, but that is just not a challenge that I have in my life. You know? So I'm guessing that this is just not specifically for me, but other than that, in terms of the actual feeling of the formula and the performance, it's very silicone-y feeling. Like, this one feels kind of creamy oily, this one feels kind of creamy waxy, this one feels dimethicone-y, so like these teeny tiny particles of silicone, you know what I mean? Like ridiculously small, but has that almost like micro gritty feeling to it, and that's the blur factor. I wish it were a little more of a powder and a little less of a balm. Like, I wish I kind of touched it and it like didn't come off in this weird creamy melty way on my finger. I want it to be kind of more like the House Labs bronzer, like that gel powder texture, and it isn't, it's a balm. It's weird. It's weird stuff. And so I'm not sure like who to recommend it to, how to recommend using it, because I just really feel like I'm not the target customer for it. It's probably a miracle for someone. I just don't get it personally. I'm sure it's someone's miracle. Danessa Myricks does not just, you know, go off half-cocked making something. Like she made it for a reason. It just doesn't quite reach me. And then the Sneaky Balm is in its own class. It's like this Glossier stretch concealer without all of that weird emollients. I don't think that it is weird necessarily, but not everybody wants the shine of the stretch concealer, and it's hydrating and balmy and that like low medium coverage in the same way, but it doesn't change the texture of my skin. And you can apply it all over the face, and it gives this amazing undetectable kind of coverage that mimics the actual finish of your skin. It's truly Sneaky Balm. It's truly sneaky in the sense that like you can wear it and it doesn't look like there's makeup on your face. Like that's the whole idea of it. Kackie was and probably still is, I don't follow her career that closely, but you know, she worked for years and years and years as a makeup artist professionally on sets, right? And so it's not about making people look like snatched to the gods, it's about making their skin look like skin and that you don't notice the makeup. And that's, I feel like, the intention and the intelligence that's built into Sneaky Balm. It's for people who truly don't want to look like they're wearing makeup. So I hope that that helps. And I honestly, like with the exception of the Danessa Myricks, I would recommend any of them just for different reasons. For any of y'all watching this video, if you love the Danessa Myricks Blurring Balm Powder, can you do me a favor and tell me in a comment like how you use it, what step in your routine it is and what you apply it with and what it does for you? Because I would love to both understand like who it's for and also possibly be able to like integrate it into my routine and understand it better and be able to recommend it, you know? Because it's very, very seldom that I'm truly stumped by a product, and that formula stumps me. Oh man, I love these kinds of videos. I love filming them. There are so many people who say that they love watching them, and that makes me so happy because filming these like helps me really like dig in and get my thoughts out, the stuff that I have been like aching to explain. The curiosity, y'all's curiosity like brings it out. It makes me very happy. Oh, Gucci or Guerlain bronzer. That is tough because I bought the Guerlain bronzer and I returned it. I bought it in the very lightest shade and it was like apricot orange on me. So I don't know specifically, but the Gucci one is unbelievable. It is so good. It is so good. I have the very lightest shade and it's like this beautiful, like rosy, blushy kind of bronzer. It's gorgeous and the whole experience is wonderful. The Guerlain, this is a personal preference thing, but the Guerlain fragrance just blech. And the Gucci fragrance, I like it very much. So yeah, that's just my personal take. I only tried it long enough to know that I needed to return it because it was just like wild. It was wild. It was just like this just crazy orange apricot citrus color on my face. I was like, huh? So yeah, I was confused. Of the two Gucci blushes you have, which one should I get? Skin twin prone to redness. So skin twin meaning that she is, you know, my same complexion. All my recommendations have worked for her in terms of skin match, and also being prone to redness, you know, kind of like Hannah, just like anytime you touch your skin, it just kind of goes, blah. I would recommend this one. The other one's kind of like, super dupeable, but this is number 5. I'm done mentioning the actual shade names because they differ online to the one, what they say on the package. So number 5, it is this very soft, beautiful kind of like purpley beige, right? Just desaturated kind of purpley pink. And it works beautifully for my skin tone because the warmth kind of counterbalances this a little bit, but also if you're prone to redness, this does have just enough of kind of that muckiness to it. You don't want to accentuate the redness. And the other one that I have is just very pink. The Westman Atelier skin tint versus the Rose Ink skin tint. So not this, but this, the new skin tint from Westmin Atelier, and I do also have the Rose Ink Skin Enhanced Luminous Tinted Serum here. So this is pretty much the same formula as the Chanel Le Beige Water Fresh tint, not the complexion touch, but the original tint. And this is just an entirely new kind of formula that I had my misgivings on. I will go ahead and recount them if you didn't watch that video. One, the first ingredient is squalane, which just for whatever reason sits right on top of my skin. It doesn't like communicate with my skin in any way. And so I felt like this never soaked in or dried down or really like did anything other than just like sit there, you know? It just kind of sat there on my skin and stayed soupy. They also recommend only using 3 drops, which is great if what you need is 3 drops of foundation, but I would argue 3 drops of anything will look just fine. You know, I'm kind of interested in something that has a little bit more like flexibility to a formula than that, but it does have this like just really, really unbelievable luminosity to it. It has a ton of mica in it. I think mica was, I think I counted like the 5th or 6th ingredient in there. And a lot of really beautiful oils. The other problem I have with this is that it's got efficacy level skincare ingredients, which irritated my skin. I think that a lot of brands have started to get in the habit of marketing skincare ingredients in their makeup as something that's just like a universally beneficial thing, but we don't all use the same skincare. You know, sometimes makeup just needs to be makeup and we can all, you know, put our skincare on differently, the way that God intended, because, you know, yeah, that's great if the skincare ingredients, which could be many, 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 many things, you know, agree with your skin, but it's just as likely that they don't. So I don't want that stuff in my makeup necessarily. I think that that's kind of the issue with the Haus Labs foundation too. They're like 20 plus skincare ingredients. I'm like, who cares? Like, what if my skin doesn't like those skincare ingredients kind of thing? So it's beautiful. And if it works for your skin, then that's fantastic. But it just sits there. It just sits there on my skin and it smells like fry oil because it has so many oils in it. Like it really just smells like a deep fryer. And then we have the Rose Ink Skin Enhanced. This is, you know, mostly silicones, right? Because it's that funky suspension type product. You know, it looks like a broken cream sauce and then you have to bring it back together. And it's incredibly low coverage. I would say that they're very similar in coverage. Obviously, like all you really see is like a finish on my hands, but you can see that there's blurring happening. You know, you can see my veins on this hand with nothing on it. I would recommend the Rose Ink personally, just because I think that a formula that looks like this does really benefit from having a little bit of silicones in it. It's going to have more stability than, you know, this is just basically an oil. When there's not much to it, it needs to have a little bit of like substance, and I feel like the silicone gives it a little bit more substance. It does, it wears more like a makeup, and it's going to give you so many other abilities to combine things with it. Even if it really doesn't show up on the skin very much, you can still put, it's almost like the virtual foundation that I loved from Becca, because it like primes your skin in a way that feels like you put on foundation, but it doesn't look like it. And so the rest of your makeup goes on as if you put on foundation, but you have so much like freedom to do whatever you want in terms of your coverage, because it's really just like not making that decision for you up front. Like I always say with like a full coverage foundation, it's like, oh God, now I have to paint my whole face back on kind of thing. So yeah, you can see as these are sitting there on my skin, the Rose Ink has dried down. It's not tacky anymore. Like it's not completely transfer proof, but it's not tacky. Whereas this is like, I mean, it's still just slick as ever. I might as well just put it on. It only dries down insofar as like my skin would soak up the ingredients. And like I said, squalane and my skin are just like, I don't know her. For those reasons, I would recommend the Rose Ink. And it also doesn't have a fragrance, and it has a larger shade range, and it is less expensive than the Chanel. So I think that it's a really like good buy as it goes for, you know, if that's the kind of formula that you're looking for. But if the silicones in it bother you, the Westman Atelier might be better. But yeah, overall, I don't want to yuck anybody's yum, but like, yuck. I didn't like it. I didn't like it, I'm sorry. Kelly just asked me if I'm doing Vlogmas this year. Should I do Vlogmas this year? I don't know. I've never done Vlogmas. Merit versus Victoria Beckham lipsticks. Very, very different animals here. So I have here Sway and I have Fashion. Sway from Victoria Beckham and Fashion from Merit. Now, everybody loves these Merit lipsticks except for me. You know what? It's pretty, it's fine, but it's like nothing to write home about. It's a little hard to control. Everybody said I got the wrong shade. There shouldn't be a wrong shade. There just shouldn't be a wrong shade. I shouldn't have to figure out how to p-hack a freaking shade range of lipsticks. So that excuse, don't fly with me. Now this, absolutely gorgeous. They're pigmented, like both of them are. And I'm not a big like, you know, pigmented lipstick person, but actually those are not that dissimilar. I really thought they were gonna be like shockingly dissimilar, but Sway is naturally just this beautiful wash of color. It's like a medium pigment lipstick. Merit is trying to cover the whole spectrum of what you can get out of it, and I feel like it doesn't want to commit to a single one of them. So, you know, you can wear this at full saturation and it's gonna just be there. It's just gonna be kind of like soupy and you're aware of it. And like, you know, for like something that's supposed to be kind of like a satin matte, it never particularly dries down, but you can also blot it and like then you end up with like kind of inconsistent pigment. And if you're new here and you're like, well, I love that because that's the French girl look of just the like effortless smudgy lip. I've discussed this a lot in the past. Someone analyzed me in my comments at one point and said like, because of the angular nature of my features and things like that, some kind of geometry dictates like why I can't wear things like smudgy and messy. They just look smudgy and messy on me. They don't look cool and effortless. And so that's why I think this formula just doesn't really work for me. I'm rewatching this and I'm like, why are you getting so worked up about a freaking lipstick? Like, I don't really know where the rage was coming from. There's like so much tension in my voice about a freaking lipstick. So I take my headband off in a few minutes. I really think that that's what it was. I was like having headband rage. So it's really not that deep, y'all. It's just a lipstick formula that doesn't really work for me, but it will probably work for, I mean, it obviously works for plenty of people. I don't know, my villain came out. I much prefer the Victoria Beckham lipstick. Plus, I mean, this is just, again, personal preference, but like, I would so much rather have that little shape for precision's sake on my lip than this weird paddle. This is just, it's so clunky. Like, I get it everywhere, and this is just so precise. So precise. It's like halfway in between a regular bullet and like a lip liner, you know? There's just something so easy about this and elegant feeling. And this is so clunky and I find it really hard to use. So I know I'm in the minority, but I feel like I gave enough caveats for y'all to understand why I don't think that it works for me. And it's just because it's like an aesthetic that isn't for everybody and it's just not for me. Kaleidos Cold Brew versus M Cosmetics Rodin. This is a great comparison. Y'all are really paying attention. So this is a quad from Kaleidos, and I was just pointing out that even though the Kaleidos packaging, it's a little unconventional for unconventional's sake to me. I like that it's cushioned because like, it's so much less likely to break. You know, it's like if you drop it, hey, it's got its own little cushion in there. If you like travel with it, it's kind of nice. That, and you know, this was, gosh, I want to say like the 5th or 6th iteration when she started putting out different colorways of the Divine Skies eyeshadow palette, because for the longest time, all we had was Magic Hour? Was Magic Hour the one? I can't remember, but this came out with her Masterpiece collection. I believe there were 2 of them, and this is like the fairer / cooler version of it. And it is still not quite as cool as Cold Brew across the board, but they're close. So let's swatch. Michelle Phan knows how to make a matte eyeshadow, okay? They just have this like silky gorgeousness to them. Those Kaleidos mattes are nothing to sneeze at either. They're so pigmented though, like you kind of got to be careful, but they're really velvety, like ridiculous. I'm gonna try and swatch these shades against their most similar shades in the Rodin palette for the sake of comparison here. So here obviously is Cold Brew because it's a quad, and here's Rodin, it's 6 shades. And I swatched the medium brown and the kind of lighter brown next to each other, and those are the most similar shades. And then it very much like deviates in terms of, I feel like almost the disparateness of the shades, right? Because The Rodin palette stays very, very close in this medium to highlight kind of category. You don't have anything particularly like wildly deep. Nothing that you're gonna be able to do a really dramatic crease with, nothing that you're going to be able to do a really dramatic eyeliner with, but by contrast, you could get something really wearable and beautiful and like a believable illusion out of this deep shade right here. And this also, sorry, this one right here, you know, if you built enough contrast with it, it could also be a very believable, like, you know, crease shade or like a transition shade or something. It's not to say that it's an incomplete palette. It just does not have the range that this one does. And I almost think that like, it's too big of an idea for 4 shades. Do you know what I mean? Like you can get something so easy out of this, and this you're gonna have to mix some stuff together probably because that deep shade is such a leap. It's such a big leap from the next darker shade. So you have I mean, that shade is just ridiculous. It's like this beautiful wet look glitter because, you know, when it shifts in the light, it's hardly there in some angles, and then it just pops in others. And it can really just like change any of those shades to make them like glittery looking. But it is a little bit difficult because there's no particularly light shade in here. It's just this topper. So it's like you would need to pull out your complexion. If you are fair, you would need to pull out your complexion powder or something like that. But for deep skin tones, I feel like the Rodin, I mean, she did make 2 of them. This is the fairer of the 2, but the Rodin palette would probably not give you enough depth to build a whole look with. I almost think that, you know, cold brew, it could work for fair skin, but I would argue that it's actually like more oriented for medium to deep skin. And then this is, you know, going to be more useful for somebody who looks like me. So all the formulas, like hands down, some of the most beautiful formulas, just absolutely gorgeous. They swatch beautifully, they apply beautifully. And if you are a person who's passionate about matte eyeshadows, these brands share your passion. Okay, here's one that I don't have to swatch. Dior Backstage or Charlotte Tilbury Concealer or neither, LOL, which is a very informed question because I feel like if you have a concealer that you like, it's probably better than either of those. I like the Charlotte Tilbury one because it's really brightening, and so it has a place in my routine for that, like if I need to really brighten a look. But other than that, I do feel like it's got a little too much kind of like reflective quality to it, a little bit too much like pearlescence. I would pick the Uma, right? The Uma has that really gorgeous like pearly thing to it that I feel like is done better in Uma than it is in the Charlotte Tilbury, if that makes sense. Okay, the headband's coming off. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I can't even think. I have such a big head. The Dior, I haven't tried it. I ordered it at the Sephora sale and then it sold out and they just like canceled that part of my order, but I didn't end up rebuying it because A, I've never been sure about a shade, and B, I've heard that it is wildly fragranced. And so I just let it go. I don't think that it's like gotten rave reviews anywhere particularly, but I don't know, I use the Backstage Face and Body and it's just a little bit too matte for me. So I think that, so I would say that like if you're interested in either of those, I would go for the Kosas. I don't know. I mean, do you hate the Kosas? Have you tried the Kosas? I understand that people say that it goes off really quickly. I have not had that issue, but I'm not trying to gaslight anybody. I just haven't had that issue. Maybe I like heavily refrigerate my room. But yeah, I don't know. I just think that as concealers go, those are both kind of finicky. Not on prompt, but like favorite contour brush. I can answer this really quickly. It's right here. This is the BK by Angie Hot and Flashy A507, and I have 10% off at BK. Underneath all of my videos, the code is Kackie10, and this is, I think, like $18 or something, so. Several people said Kosas or Make Powder. Kosas or Make Powder. And then I had other several people say Make Beauty versus Haus Labs or Kosas versus Haus Labs. So those are the 3 that I'm going to compare today. And someone actually said for like wildly dry skin. So I have wildly dry skin. I can tell you my feelings on this because I am the proud owner of wildly dry skin. I don't hate the Kosas, as you can tell, because that's the pan peeking through. It has been one of my favorites for a very, very long time. So this is the Cloud Set in Airy. However, lately, there have been some really sophisticated powder formulas coming out, okay? One of them is the diffusion set from Make Beauty, and it is like even more finely milled somehow. Okay, we used to really be scared of finely milled powders because we were always talking about an HD powder, and HD powders were always white for some reason. For all skin tones, they're just like, have a white powder. And like, it just made us look like fools in flash photography. You know, anything that like light on your face, it was just like, here's your powder, especially because we were baking with it. So, you know, now that they are in skin tones, they're a lot less scary. I hesitate to say it, but I like the Make better than the Kosas. It's just, it's even more blurring somehow, but I wouldn't kick the Kosas out of bed. It was still the original. And the Haus Labs, y'all, the Haus Labs is so good. And you know, I don't really like the foundation. Like, I feel absolutely, even though I love Lady Gaga, I feel no obligation to like say something nice just because I love her, but like the blur, it is so lightweight. Do you see that? It just absolutely disappears. Like, I've heard people describe, I think Kelly is the one who always describes the Kosas cloud set as angel skin. The Haus Labs is angel skin, okay? It is. And I don't actually know between the two which one I would recommend, between Make and the Haus Labs. I guess it just depends on whether you want a pressed powder or a loose powder. That's all I can really say, because they're both so excellent. They're so excellent, and they're really similar. I would say that Make is probably going to give you a little bit more coverage. Yeah, Make is going to give you a little bit more coverage. Haus is going to give you a little bit more brightening. And Kosas is just, it's kind of like the way Kosas is with everything. It is fantastic, and it does a lot of things at once. Their concealer is like that. I realized, like, after using so many concealers, I'm like, but the one I would recommend is Kosas, because it's like the most likely to work for more people. And when I first tried all of their brow products, I was like, yeah, these are fine, you know, if I was in a pinch, blah, blah, blah. As soon as I ran out of them, I was like, I miss them. I want to use them again, and so I pulled out another set that's in a different color, but I don't care. It's just kind of what I prefer using. I like them a lot. And it's just like, almost kind of like Thrive in the sense that it's easy to forget about stuff that isn't particularly standout because it's so reliable. And I feel like you're not going to be mad if you get the Kosas cloud set. It's just good at what it does. It brightens, it blurs, it has a touch of coverage, so it's like right in the middle. And sometimes it's hard to kind of like make a big deal out of something that's like really perfectly in the middle. It's so beautiful. So yeah, happy medium, a little bit more coverage on the Make, less coverage and more brightening on the Haus Labs. And I'm happy that I own all of them. Oh my gosh, I love them all. Everybody wants a comparison with Westmin Atelier Mimi. So the big problem with Westmin Atelier's Mimi blush is that it is a site exclusive on westmanatelier.com. You can't get it on sale on Sephora or on sale on Credo or anything like that. So every time these websites have these big like 20% off sales or whatever, Mimi is never on there. And so it's like, you gotta go pay full price for it, which I did. And it's an exquisite little shade. So people have asked me to compare it to everything. Flirtatious from Pat McGrath, Inner Glow from Kierweiss, Louise from Violette. I'm just gonna pull all of the ones that I think are worth comparing to it, and we will just parse it out as a family, okay? Okay, I went on a little swatch journey. I had to like turn my camera off and come back. So right here, that's Westmin Atelier. It is, to the best of my ability to explain this, it is like a pale nude that just leans ever so slightly cool lavender. Like, especially in context. Like, you look at it in comparison with these other swatches, and you can see how in the light, it shifts just ever so slightly off pink. You know what I mean? It goes a little tiny bit purple, right? This much. This very tiny little bit of mucky mauve in there. So I have some other pale nude kind of cream blushes here, and then oddly enough, this is just how it happened, but like these two ended up being the most lavender by comparison. So this right here is actually our most similar by comparison, I would say, and that is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Stick Blush in Latte. Very, very close to Mimi. They really have almost the same effect on the skin. And they don't look exactly the same when they're next to each other, but that's because they both shift in the light. So the next one over here, this is the new one from Violette, FR. This is Louise, and it smells just off the charts. It smells so good. Ah, I love it so much. This is Blush Please in the Glow Play blushes from MAC. So they're those weird kind of squishy putty blushes. And it has that like funky dimethicone kind of fluffy feeling when you use it. So it's a different finish on the skin. Then we have Inner Glow. This is Inner Glow from Kierweiss, and you can see now like why I gravitate towards these shades. It's because it's hard to put your finger on what the heck that even is when it's on my skin, especially. You're just like, it's a beigey, pinky, purpley thingy. You know, it's just like this pale desaturated kind of color, and it's exactly what I like to wear. So I did build that up quite a bit so that you could see the actual trueness of the pigment, but when that's like blurred out, it goes quite beige on me. You start to get the more like nude effect from it, quote unquote, and then you can see why I like Pat McGrath Flirtatious so much. It's because it's just right there on the money with that kind of desaturated purpley undertone. I say the same words over and over and over again. So yeah, kind of makes sense in the context of being right next to Inner Glow, right? Look at how it shifts. It goes purple, purple beige, purple peach almost, you know? And I think that that's kind of the thing that makes these colors so elusive, right? It's like hard to describe them. It's actually because they have a shift in the light, not like a duochrome shift, but the way that they shift in the light goes kind of peach purple. Hope that helps. There's a reason I have all of them. If I had to pick my favorite formula out of them, my favorite cream formula would probably still be Mimi, but you can see that like the shades are pretty dupeable in terms of like, you know, getting it. It's less expensive. It's still like $32, I think, for this. The Latte Stick from Anastasia is still a lovely creamy formula, but it isn't quite as like satin matte on the skin. I would say that the blush sticks from Westmin Atelier almost go to like a hybrid powder finish. And the MAC Glow Play has that powder finish to it, but you have to apply quite a bit of this to get the effect of like the glow play of it all. It's a little temperamental in that sense. It starts to kind of like gum up when I use as much as I really want to do, you know? So I don't know if I'd recommend that one as much. Inner Glow is kind of in a category all its own. It's just the weirdest stuff ever because it's actually got a lot of reflection to it. You know, it's like kind of got a lot of mica in it, a lot more so than the others. It's a little bit more unabashedly like highlightery, but it's still not glittery. It's off the charts. It's so pretty. And I mean, you know, the only powder in there was the Pat McGrath powder, and it's Flirtatious. I mean, there's a reason it looks like this. It's just, it's the best. You're gonna get me started on these Kackie bentos. Which Kackie bento to get for a skin twin everyday subtle / glam look? So I pulled two here. I have Spiked Ginger and Chocolate Dahlia. Very similar in their concepts, but one is a little bit more neutral cool and the other one's just a little tiny bit more warm toned. The ginger is obviously the one that's going to be a little bit more warm toned. Also Spiked Ginger, instead of going medium deep, goes medium light and then goes a little darker on the lid shade or on the shimmer shade, whereas Chocolate Dahlia goes medium deep matte and then just this really pretty like glam looking highlight shade. So I personally would go Chocolate Dahlia if, you know, I really like had to choose, but I think the Spiked Ginger is really cool for getting kind of like that bedroom eyes look where you have actually like a dark shimmer on the eyes, a darker shimmer on the eyes, and it's still really like, it does the trick. But I would say, yeah, for like an everyday look, I would go Chocolate Dahlia. My initial instinct was probably on point. Someone asked about ABH Nouveau versus Rose Metals. I went ahead and bought Rose Metals. So I can't give you that info right now, but I will. I'll probably do a whole video on it. And the final one is Westman Atelier Lip in Nana or the Rowan Lip in Remy. I always say this in these kinds of videos, but I love when y'all tell me two things that I've never thought about comparing to one another, and they are actually like so similar. I love getting a peek inside y'all's brains. This is almost empty, my Nana, like I need another one. And somebody told me that theirs doesn't smell like limoncello, mine smells like limoncello. I don't know. The Westman Atelier Squeaky Clean Liquid Lip Balm smells like limoncello for me. and other people said that it's like vanilla or something. Maybe they changed it, I'm not sure. I'm gonna swatch on the other hand because my hand is getting like really caked up and these are subtle. Now, even though the Westman Atelier claims to be a liquid lip balm, it is not that slippy thing like, you know, Rodin is. Westman Atelier is just a very thin, almost like a lip gloss oil kind of thing. I would compare it more closely to like the wet lip oils from Kosas, but I think Westmin Atelier really wins on subtlety of color. I think that I was very initially impressed by the Rodin lip glosses, or the, you know, Kiss My liquid lip balms, because it was the first time I had tried a formula like that. But I actually like the Westmin Atelier one, the shades, better. And they're also a little bit more hydrating and longer wearing. That's the one thing to me about those, like the original liquid lip balm kind of formulas. So even the like overnight treatments or whatever from Fit Glow everybody loves, they're beautiful, but like I wouldn't wear that overnight. It doesn't wear very long, and it's not even an appearance thing. It's just like after a while I noticed that it's just not there. And I feel like the Westman Atelier ones like do wear a lot longer, and they are actually more effective at hydrating, and they're in this really beautiful glass. And much like everything else at Westman Atelier, they have just a lot of subtlety to the shades themselves, and that's why this one's empty, is because I have used it nonstop. I love it so much. Let's put some on. I actually, right now on my lips, I have my Kackie lip liner, and then I just have that clear plumper from Revolution Beauty. Yeah, that Amanda got for me, and I love this stuff. I love it. It's very long wearing, and it's very plumping. Oh, this is like the lip equivalent of Pat McGrath Flirtatious. It's so hard for me to like put stuff like this back in a drawer, because it's like, I want to be reminded that it exists all the time. Cause like there was a time period when I first started with this that I put it with every single makeup look. I like couldn't justify not wearing it because it's just such a good color. And Garçon is like a deeper version of this particular shade for like, you know, darker lip tones. Check them out if you haven't already. Very excellent. I love them so much. So I believe that that concludes this edition. I can't believe we went 2 months without doing a this or that video. We will definitely be doing more of them sooner. I want to do at least one more before the end of the year. And if you enjoyed this and you want more, I will link to the playlist right here for the other this or that videos, because if you didn't have your question addressed or any other question that's just in your mind, there's a good chance I already did it in one of the previous videos. So watch that and like, comment, and subscribe. I'll be happy to see you guys in the next one. Bye.